Across the galaxy, she was spoken of in reverent tones that made spines straighten and mandibles still. The voice of creation. The living conduit between flesh and future. The one who stood at the center of 1,000 generations and decided whether a species continued or quietly faded into memory. Stories described her as serene, unshakable, carved from purpose itself. It was said her gaze alone could still wars, that her words carried the weight of biology and destiny intertwined. Entire civilizations scheduled their calendars around the rare moments she emerged in public. Which made it deeply ironic that, at this exact moment, she was pacing in a private chamber, whispering ceremonial lines under her breath and stopping every few seconds to start over. No, emphasis on the third harmonic, she muttered, tapping a clawed finger against a floating scroll that immediately drifted out of reach. She lunged for it, missed, and let out a sharp, undignified sound that would have given the Galactic Council a collective heart attack if they could hear it. She inhaled, exhaled, adjusted the drape of her ceremonial mantle for the 4th time in as many minutes, and stared at her reflection in a polished obsidian surface. Perfect posture. Calm eyes. Divine authority. She practiced the look until it stopped trembling. This was ridiculous. She had presided over rites older than some stars. She had overseen genetic legacies that spanned light centuries. She had never once faltered. But she had also never, not once in all recorded history, performed the ritual with a human. That single fact sat in her chest like a misaligned heartbeat. Humans were unpredictable. Not biologically, that part was well documented and exhaustively analyzed, but emotionally. They laughed at the wrong moments, asked questions when silence was expected. And worst of all, they had a habit of treating titles like suggestions rather than law. She checked the scroll again. Everything was correct. The chants, the symbolic gestures, the required distance, the acceptable proximity, the precise timing. All flawless. If something went wrong, it would not be the ritual. It would be her. On the other side of several layers of sanctified architecture, the humans stood waiting, staring at a wall that had been carved with swirling symbols and glowing veins of light that pulsed gently, like the building itself was breathing. He had been told this was an honor beyond measure. He had been told to remain still, respectful, and silent. He was doing his best. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, and tried not to think about how every surface looked expensive in a way that suggested accidental damage might result in interstellar consequences. His clothes felt wrong. Too plain. Too human. He resisted the urge to straighten them for the 10th time. Okay, he thought. This is fine. Completely fine. Chosen by an alien civilization for a sacred ritual tied to reproduction and destiny. Normal Tuesday stuff. He had imagined many versions of this moment. None of them involved standing alone, wondering whether it was rude to clear his throat in a holy structure older than his entire species' written history. When the doors finally opened, they did so without a sound. Light spilled out, warm and controlled, revealing a figure that matched every myth he'd ever heard, and none of the tension he sensed radiating just beneath the surface. She was tall, elegant, luminous in a way that made the air feel more attentive. Every movement carried ritual significance, whether intentional or not. The voice of creation incarnate. She began to speak, her voice layered with resonance, each word shaped to echo through tradition and biology alike. Participant from the human lineage, she intoned, flawlessly formal. You stand before. She stopped. Not because she forgot the words. Because he raised his hand slightly, hesitated, then lowered it halfway, unsure if interrupting a living symbol of galactic continuity was how one got vaporized. Sorry, he said automatically. Just, should I be standing somewhere specific? There was a mark back there, but then the floor started glowing and I didn't want to step on the wrong thing. Silence fell like a dropped relic. Her mind scrambled. This was not in the script. There was no annotated response for polite confusion delivered with genuine concern. She blinked once, then twice, recalibrating. Yes, she said, a fraction too quickly. There. Where you are is acceptable. Oh. Great. I'm excellent at acceptable. Something in her chest loosened despite herself. She continued, each word precise, every gesture deliberate. He listened closely, nodding at odd moments, his expression thoughtful rather than awed. That alone unsettled her more than any breach of protocol. Others knelt. Others trembled. Others stared at her as if she were an abstract force given shape. He looked at her like she might ask him a follow-up question. As the formalities progressed, she became acutely aware of every detail she normally ignored. The cadence of her voice. The positioning of her hands. The way the light reflected off ceremonial glyphs. For the first time, she wondered how she appeared, not as an icon, but as an individual. He, meanwhile, felt a strange shift happening in his own chest. The fear he'd expected, of failing, of being unworthy, of disappointing an entire alien civilization, never quite arrived. Instead, he noticed small things. The way her posture stiffened when she recited certain lines. The way she paused, just barely, before referencing the ritual's importance. She was nervous. The realization hit him softly but firmly. She wasn't here to judge him. She was here hoping she wouldn't fail. The thought changed everything. His shoulders relaxed. His breathing steadied. Whatever this ritual was, whatever it meant for the galaxy, it wasn't just about him proving something. It was about two beings, equally unsure, standing on opposite sides of an ancient expectation and quietly hoping the other wouldn't notice their hands shaking. And for the first time since the doors had opened, she met his eyes not as the voice of creation, but as someone desperately trying to do her job right. That, more than any prophecy, made him stand a little straighter. The explanation was supposed to be simple. She had practiced it 100 times in solitude, reciting the principles until they flowed with the confidence expected of her position. The ritual required alignment, intention, resonance between participating forms. It was not about mechanics but harmony, not about action but meaning. She had delivered these words to delegations, councils, and chosen partners from dozens of species without deviation. Yet standing across from him, she found herself elaborating. And the resonance, she continued, hands moving in precise arcs that caused faint light to gather around her fingers, is not merely biological. It is emotional, cognitive, and contextual. He nodded slowly, brow furrowed. So, just to make sure I've got this right, you're saying if I'm stressed, distracted, or thinking about what I'm going to have for dinner later, the universe might notice? Yes, she said automatically. Then paused. No. I mean, perhaps. Not dinner specifically. Good, he said, visibly relieved. Because it's been a long day. She almost smiled. Almost. She cleared her throat, the sound echoing far more dramatically than she intended. The preparation phase is designed to establish mutual awareness. You are not expected to perform. You are expected to be present. That I can do, he said. I think. Present is sort of our specialty. We're terrible at foresight. This time, a soft sound escaped her before she could stop it. It took her a second to realize it was laughter. Quiet, surprised, entirely unscripted. She froze, waiting for the universe to object. Nothing happened. He blinked, then grinned, clearly encouraged. Okay, good. I was worried I'd already messed something up. You have not, she said, then added, because honesty seemed suddenly important. Though this is different. How so? She hesitated. The ritual text did not cover how to answer that without invoking doctrine. Instead, she found herself speaking plainly. Most participants arrive with expectations, ambition, fear, reverence. You arrived with questions. Yeah, well, he shrugged. When someone says ritual of reproduction, it feels irresponsible not to ask a few. Her crest flushed a deeper hue before she could stop it. The terminology is broad. That tracks, he said. Earth does that too. We call things team-building exercises that permanently scar people. She stared at him, trying to parse whether that was humor or a warning. She decided it was humor and let the tension ease another fraction. The scrolls floated closer, responding to her subtle gesture. Symbols shifted, reorganizing themselves to reflect the preparation phase. Normally, this was where she would assert control, guide the flow, ensure flawless execution. Instead, she found herself explaining again. The ritual does not compel, she said carefully. Participation is choice. Alignment cannot be forced. That is why this moment matters. He tilted his head. So if I said no, hypothetically, the galaxy wouldn't explode? No, she said a touch too firmly. It would adjust. Good to know. There was a pause, comfortable in a way she did not expect. She realized she was watching him breathe, the steady rhythm grounding something unsettled in her. No one ever looked relaxed in this chamber. It was designed to inspire awe, not ease. You are calm, she observed. He snorted. I'm absolutely not. I'm just very good at pretending when things get weird. Humans pretend? It's basically our primary survival mechanism. That earned another quiet laugh, and this time she didn't stop it. The sound surprised her again, warmer than she remembered laughter being. She wondered when she had last done that in front of someone who wasn't bound by ceremony. She gestured for him to sit, then hesitated, suddenly unsure if that broke protocol. He sat anyway, carefully, like someone perching on an object that might be historically significant. May I ask a question? He said. You may, she replied, bracing herself. What happens to you if this goes wrong? The question hit harder than any challenge ever had. She had expected curiosity about outcome, about legacy, about what humanity might gain. No one had ever asked about her. About consequence beyond symbolism. She chose honesty again. It would be noted. That sounds ominous. It is, she admitted. I have never failed. First times are like that, he said gently. They're terrifying right up until they're just memories. She studied him then, really studied him. Not as a variable, but as a presence. He was still nervous. She could tell. But he was also paying attention in a way that felt rare and unsettling. You are not what I expected, she said. Yeah, he replied. I get that a lot. The chamber hummed softly around them, responding to subtle emotional shifts. The light warmed, deepened. She felt it in her bones, the beginning of alignment not driven by chant or command, but conversation. She realized, with a start, that she was no longer reciting anything. She was just talking. And somehow, against all logic and preparation, that felt more sacred than anything written on the scrolls. The transition from preparation to execution was supposed to be unmistakable. A shift in light, a change in tone, the unmistakable hum of ancient mechanisms waking from dormancy. She initiated it with a single controlled gesture, one she had performed countless times, expecting the chamber to respond with familiar precision. It did. And then it didn't. The light brightened, threads of illumination weaving through the air like patient, deliberate thoughts. The floor resonated beneath them, not shaking but acknowledging. Symbols rose from the walls, rotating slowly, aligning themselves according to parameters written long before either of them had been born. All of it was correct. All of it was expected. She began the first chant, her voice settling into the layered cadence that carried meaning beyond words. The chamber responded immediately, harmonizing with her tone, deep and steady. He listened, eyes unfocused, not bored but intent, as if he were trying to hear something beneath the sound. Focus on connection, she instructed, smoothly transitioning to the next phase. On resonance. Let what is within you align with what is offered. He took a breath. A real one. Slow, deliberate. She felt the shift instantly. Normally, this was the moment participants tried to empty themselves, to quiet their thoughts and submit to the ritual's guidance. Instead, something surged outward, not chaotic but dense, layered, startlingly vivid. The chamber's hum deepened, then wavered. What are you doing? She asked softly, not accusing, just confused. I'm focusing, he said. You said connection? Yes, but... The symbols flickered. Assistive constructs embedded in the chamber recalibrated, their glow pulsing erratically. She felt a ripple through the ritual matrix, like a system encountering unexpected input. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, her voice dropping its ceremonial resonance entirely. He hesitated. "Everything, I guess." The hum spiked. She felt it then, unmistakably. Not just energy, but emotion. Raw, unfiltered, overlapping in a way no species she'd ever worked with produced. There was longing there. Uncertainty. Hope threaded tightly with fear. A sense of humor braided inexplicably with deep, quiet determination. The chamber reacted as if struck by a tuning fork. Lights flared brighter than protocol allowed. The floor glyphs rotated faster, struggling to stabilize. Somewhere beyond the chamber, an alarm chimed once, politely, as if unsure whether it was truly needed. She reached out instinctively, not to stop him but to anchor the ritual. "You must narrow your focus," she said, though even as she spoke, she wasn't sure that was correct. "Choose a single point of alignment." "I don't think we do that very well," he replied, eyes still closed. "We kind of pile things together." The constructs disagreed violently. The hum fractured into overlapping harmonics, each one feeding into the next. Data streams that had been dormant for centuries lit up, recording readings that made no sense within established parameters. "This has never happened," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "Is that bad?" "Yes," she said. Then, after a beat, "No. I don't know." The chamber doors sealed automatically, a precaution she hadn't triggered in decades. The symbols abandoned their slow elegance and began to orbit, pulled into a pattern that wasn't written anywhere in the scrolls. She could feel the ritual stretching, adapting, trying desperately to accommodate what he was offering. And what he was offering was not restraint. Images surfaced in the resonance field unbidden. Not visual projections, but impressions so clear they might as well have been memories. A small dwelling filled with mismatched furniture. Laughter echoing too loudly in a confined space. Loss carried quietly, without ceremony. The stubborn refusal to stop caring, even when it hurt. She staggered slightly, catching herself before the loss of composure became visible. "Stop," she said, though there was no authority in the word. "You are overwhelming the matrix." "I'm sorry," he said immediately, panic flickering through the resonance. "I can stop. Just tell me how." She realized then what the problem was. He wasn't trying to dominate the ritual. He wasn't pushing against it. He was giving it everything. "No," she said quickly now. "Do not stop. Just look at me." He opened his eyes. The moment their gazes met, the chamber stilled. Not because the energy diminished, but because it aligned. The constructs recalibrated again, this time smoothly. The alarms cut off mid-chime. The symbols slowed, reorganizing themselves into a configuration she had never seen, but somehow understood. The ritual wasn't failing. It was learning. She felt exposed in a way she never had before. The resonance didn't just carry his emotions now. It reflected hers back at her. The pressure of expectation. The fear of making a single mistake. The loneliness of being revered rather than known. Her breath caught. He felt it too. "Oh," he murmured. "That's a lot." "Yes," she said softly. "It is." They stood there, suspended in a moment no text had prepared her for. The ritual pulsed steadily now, powerful but stable, fueled not by symmetry or control, but by mutual awareness. Assistants would later describe this phase as unprecedented. Sensors would log impossible readings. Scholars would argue for generations about what, exactly, had occurred. But in that moment, it was simply two beings standing within a system older than both their species, realizing that compatibility was not about perfection. It was about honesty powerful enough to rewrite the rules. And somewhere deep within the chamber, the ancient mechanisms responded, not with judgment, but with quiet, undeniable approval. The final phase of the ritual arrived quietly, without fanfare, as though the chamber itself recognized that what mattered most was already unfolding. The symbols on the walls pulsed in softer rhythms, aligning to a pattern she had never seen and could not have predicted. It was beautiful, not because it was perfect, but because it was alive, responsive, and entirely unprecedented. The chamber had become a reflection of them both, an intricate mirror of emotion, awareness, and subtle, unspoken connection. He stood a little straighter, no longer out of obedience, but because he felt capable of standing here, of being a part of something that stretched across stars and time. The panic he had carried faded into a quiet curiosity, and curiosity, combined with the human knack for defying expectations, seemed to make the entire system settle. The floating glyphs moved in gentle spirals, glowing in resonance with something he could not fully comprehend but sensed intuitively, that the ritual was not only proceeding but thriving. She watched him with a mixture of awe and disbelief. This had never happened before. She had expected to guide, to instruct, to perform her role with precision and authority, but now she found herself witnessing something entirely different. His presence, his choices, his willingness to engage fully and honestly had altered the ritual itself. It was no longer her alone shaping the outcome. She realized, with a sudden, startling clarity, that this was not about completion, or success in the traditional sense. This was about collaboration, about the unexpected beauty that emerges when two beings meet without pretense. "You've changed it," she said softly, her voice catching on the last word, as though admitting it made it real. "I didn't mean to," he said immediately, hands raised in an apologetic gesture. "I was just me. I was trying to do what you asked. And you have done more than any text or guide could dictate," she replied, stepping closer, each motion deliberate but lacking the rigidity she normally maintained. "You've taught me something I never expected to learn in a lifetime of ceremonies." He tilted his head, not entirely understanding, but sensing the gravity of her words. "That feels like a compliment." "It is," she said. "It is a recognition that the ritual, the sacred procedures, they matter. But not more than the participants themselves." The lights in the chamber dimmed slightly, softening as if acknowledging her honesty. The energy that had once surged unpredictably now flowed in a steady current, responsive and balanced. She felt a profound relief, not just for the ritual, but for herself. For the first time, she had not been perfect. And yet, in that imperfection, in that willingness to trust someone else, the outcome had been extraordinary. He moved closer as well, curiosity and respect mirrored in his expression. "So, it's done?" he asked. "Or, I mean, it's done differently?" "Yes," she said, smiling faintly, a subtle gesture that held weight beyond words. "It is done, and yet it is new. It has become something neither of us could have created alone." He laughed softly, a sound that resonated in the chamber, blending with the pulsing cymbals and the quiet hum of machinery. "I think I like new. Definitely beats the whole perfect ritual thing. Way more interesting." She studied him for a long moment, noting the honesty in his expression, the fearless way he had confronted expectations and uncertainty alike. And in that moment, she understood something profound. The ritual had never been about control, or about destiny in isolation. It had been about connection, about mutual choice, and about recognizing that even beings from the most distant corners of the galaxy could find something real in each other's presence. "You are remarkable," she said, her voice quieter now, carrying weight rather than ceremony. "So are you," he replied, almost instinctively, eyes locking in a shared understanding that neither needed to spell out further. There was laughter then, soft and warm, not directed at the ritual, but at the absurdity of expectations, of legends, of fear that had seemed so important only moments ago. The chamber seemed to sigh in relief along with them, settling into a steady glow that mirrored their calm and growing trust. As they stepped toward each other, not out of obligation but by choice, the galactic significance of the moment remained, but the focus had shifted entirely. The future, the prophecy, the history, those would all remember the ritual. But she knew and he knew that what truly mattered was the connection forged in honesty, laughter, and shared vulnerability. And somewhere deep within the chamber, the artifacts and symbols recorded not just the fulfillment of a sacred rite, but the first instance of a new principle, that love, choice, and human unpredictability could transform even the oldest traditions. That sometimes the galaxy's most potent force wasn't destiny itself, but the courage to be human within it. As the final echoes faded, she looked at him and realized that the ritual had given them both something unanticipated. Not just completion, not just recognition, but the possibility of something ongoing, something chosen freely, something shared. And he, in turn, felt the weight of expectation lift, replaced with a quiet, undeniable certainty that across the galaxy, legends might be revered, prophecies feared, and rituals observed, but humanity had a way of surprising even the most powerful, most sacred, most unshakable beings. They stepped back, eyes meeting one final time before the chamber's glow softened to ambient light. The galaxy could celebrate its miracle, its voice of creation, its sacred right. But they knew the truth: the real miracle had been discovering each other in the process.